Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back for a Monday edition of the Steel City Sports Report, where we talk all things Steelers, Penguins, and Pirates. I am your host, Brady Vini, and today's report includes the Pittsburgh Penguins make a massive yet great trade. Pittsburgh Steelers owner Art Rooney II almost made it without saying this. The Steelers' first offseason coaching change comes at the hands of the New York Jets, and more. As always, please be sure to like, comment, and share this video, as well as subscribe to the channel. Now let's get into the first news story of the day. The Pittsburgh Penguins make a massive yet great trade. We're going to start off today's edition of the Steel City Sports Report by talking about this weekend's big trade. No, not that one, or that one either. The trade I'm talking about was the Pittsburgh Penguins taking their first big step towards what will hopefully be a quick and successful rebuild. Late last Friday night, the Pittsburgh Penguins traded defenseman Marcus Pettersson and forward Drew O'Connor to the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for a conditional 2025 first-round draft pick, forward Danton Heinen, defenseman Vincent Desharnais, and prospect forward Melvin Fernstrom. Okay, a lot to digest there, so let's begin with what the Penguins gave up. Starting with Pettersson, even though the stats didn't show it, he was a key component to this defense. He grew into a solid defensive defenseman and was a great partner for Chris Letang when Brian Dumoulin left. I always thought Pettersson joined the Penguins a couple of years too late, as he would have fit in well with the cup-winning teams in 2016 and 2017, but at least he will get a better chance to compete for a cup in Vancouver. As for O'Connor, most of the things I said about Pettersson apply to him as well. He is a great power forward and a jack of all trades who will occasionally make a brilliant play. The only downside is that I think his time in Pittsburgh grew a little long in the tooth, and he has reached his final form as a high-floor, low-ceiling player. Talking about moving out Pettersson and O'Connor, Penguins general manager Kyle Dubas said, "Moving two longtime Penguins is never an easy decision. Marcus and Drew have competed day in and day out for the organization since the day they arrived. Both players are high-quality people, highly competitive players, and zero maintenance for their fellow teammates and the staff of the Penguins." Agreeing with Dubas here, and speaking on behalf of all Penguins fans, thank you PD and DOC for all you did in Pittsburgh. You were both good soldiers whose efforts are very appreciated. Moving on to what the Penguins received, let's start with the headliner, that first-round pick. That conditional 2025 first-rounder coming to Pittsburgh is actually the New York Rangers first-round pick that the Canucks acquired in the JT Miller trade earlier that day. The condition on the pick is that it is top 13 protected. What that means is if the Rangers were to draw in the top 13 selections in the 2025 NHL Draft Lottery, then they would retain their 2025 first-rounder, and then the Pens would receive the Rangers' 2026 first-round pick without any conditions at all. If the Rangers aren't in the top 13 in this year's draft, then their 2025 first is Pittsburgh's. Next, the two NHL players in Heinen and Desharnais aren't your typical throw-ins that you'll see in some trades. Heinen spent 2 full seasons in Pittsburgh from 2021 through 2023, so he already knows the Penguins system and is like a light version of Drew O'Connor. As for Desharnais, he brings a trait that is rare on the Penguins defense right now: size. Standing at 6'7", 226 pounds, Desharnais can be very useful, and another great attribute is that he's already used to playing in high-pressure games in passionate hockey environments, suiting up in 16 of the Edmonton Oilers' 25 playoff games last season. In the case that one or both men don't pan out here in Pittsburgh, I'm sure there will be a market for them in a little over 1 month's time at the trade deadline for the Pens to get more future assets. Speaking of future assets, the last piece of the trade coming to Pittsburgh is prospect forward Melvin Fernstrom. The 18-year-old Fernstrom is currently playing over in the Swedish Hockey League, and acquiring him isn't shocking because Dubas is reportedly very high on this kid. At the draft this past offseason, Dubas said he considered drafting Fernstrom with one of the Penguins' 2 second-round picks. Instead, the Pens took defenseman Harrison Brunick and forward Tanner Howe, leaving Fernstrom to be picked up in the 3rd round by Vancouver. Talking about what the Penguins acquired on Friday night, Dubas said, "Tonight's trade continues to move us in the direction set 1 year ago, which is to continue to add young prospects, young players, and draft capital to the Penguins as we chart our course to return the club back into contention as urgently as possible. We are pleased to add Danton Heinen back to the Penguins and Vincent Desharnais to the club and look forward to seeing both in uniform in the coming days. The addition of Melvin Fernstrom also gives us a prospect that was highly regarded at the 2024 NHL Draft, and the Rangers' first-round draft pick provides us with another strong asset that we can use to acquire an elite young player in the draft or via trade. All in all, I give this trade for the Pens an A+. Dubas turned a rental defenseman with no chance of re-signing and a forward who probably reached this peak into a coveted first-round pick, two serviceable players who could be traded for more draft picks, and an 18-year-old kid waiting to be developed. Pettersson and O'Connor were pretty much the two biggest trade chips that the Penguins had to offer, and now their sale helps give the Penguins a whopping 29 draft picks in the next 3 drafts, 11 including 2 first-rounders in this year's draft. Call this dramatic if you want, but a trade like this may have moved the end date of the Penguins rebuild up a year. Bravo, Kyle Dubas, bravo. The Penguins respawned the right way in their return home. Having just talked about the Pens' Big Friday trade, last year they made another big trade, that be sending forward Jake Gensel to the Carolina Hurricanes, and after that, they fell apart. Hopefully that wouldn't be the case this time around, as the Pens played in their first home game in over 2 weeks on Saturday night against the Nashville Predators. To start the game, the Penguins survived an early push from the Predators and were rewarded with a pseudo-power play goal from ex-Pred Philip Tomasino. Upon getting that important first tally, it was all Pittsburgh as they played fast and physical, making life hell for the opposition. That style of play carried over into the second period, and unsurprisingly, it was the Penguins' first line who generated the offense. Rickard Rakell showed great patience and caught a Predators player out of position, allowing him to hit Sidney Crosby with a cross-ice pass on the back door for an easy goal. Honestly, besides Crosby having a little dust-up with Predators goaltender UC Saros, it was a soothingly quiet rest of the game for the Penguins. Brian Rust added on an empty netter, and the Penguins welcomed themselves back home with a 3-0 win. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, was as good of a response to a massive sale that you possibly could have expected from the Pens. They got re-energized from the home crowd, kept the Predators on their heels with lots of offensive pressure, and Alex Nedeljkovic did his job between the pipes to earn the team's first shutout victory of the season. The Pens got to enjoy that win yesterday and today, but will be back in action tomorrow night in a massive divisional matchup against the New Jersey Devils at 7:30 p.m. Pittsburgh Steelers owner Art Rooney II almost made it without saying this. Since the beginning of last week, Pittsburgh Steelers owner Art Rooney II has been doing one-on-one season-ending interviews with local reporters. He's been doing the same old shtick of how the season ending the way it did was disappointing, how he is still confident in Mike Tomlin as the Steelers head coach, and more talking about irrelevant issues. That was the case until he sat down with WTAE's Ashley Leotis last Thursday. Leotis asked Rooney if he was worried about the Steelers' culture coming into question recently, to which Rooney responded, "Look, I'm very comfortable with the culture and this team. I think it is a winning culture. You know, I think people need to keep it in perspective here. Even though we haven't reached our goal of winning the Super Bowl, we've had winning teams, we've been making the playoffs, and I understand the disappointment in terms of not succeeding in the postseason, and that's what we have to do. But you know, it's not like we haven't had some success around here. We just need to continue to build on the culture that we have, and players like PJ and Cam Hayward, those kinds of players help you with the culture and make sure that it's being passed down to the younger players." There it was. Did you catch that? Third sentence into that answer, and Rooney finally let his true feelings fly. Quote, "I think people need to keep it in perspective here. He thinks that we are ungrateful and that we should be praising the Steelers for how they've performed for 9 years now. How dare we be upset with middle-of-the-road seasons? How dare we be upset that the Steelers don't win big games anymore? And how dare we be upset that every single season has the same ending of this team getting their asses kicked in the first round of playoffs?" All that this quote did was expose that Rooney's mindset lines up with what his brother Jim said on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Rooney wants us to accept the mediocrity that has poisoned the Steelers' culture of winning, accept that we are no longer one of the top dogs in the AFC, and accept that these constant good, not great seasons should be celebrated. Art, do everyone a favor. When Tomlin's contract expires in 2 to 3 years, don't extend him, just go with him. The Steelers' first offseason coaching change comes at the hands of the New York Jets. It has now been 23 days since the Pittsburgh Steelers were embarrassed in the wildcard round by the Baltimore Ravens, and no substantial changes to the coaching staff have been made yet. In his end-of-season press conference, Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin said that big changes were coming, only for Steelers owner Art Rooney II to say he doesn't expect wholesale changes 2 weeks later. With it sounding like the Steelers owner and head coach are having two different thoughts, us fans can easily and accurately predict right now that they will probably get rid of a few positional coaches and call it a day. Well, that first and maybe only positional coach domino fell this past Friday. As reported by NFL Network insider Ian Rappaport, the New York Jets have hired Steelers middle linebackers coach Aaron Curry as their new linebackers coach. After 2 seasons in the Steel City, Curry now heads to New Jersey, where he will take on the same role. Over the past 2 years, Curry coached a Steelers middle linebacker room that was held together by superglue, duct tape, and positive thoughts in 2023 that then had a small, but nonetheless bounce-back season last year with the addition of Patrick Queen. Now that the Steelers have an opening for their middle linebacker coaching position, names like former New England Patriots head coach Gerard Mayo and former Las Vegas Raiders head coach Antonio Pierce come to mind as strong candidates for the job. All I'm asking, and I'm talking to you, Tomlin, is that if you do bring in one of these guys, please let them do their job and possibly, run the defense a little bit. We may be stuck with Tara Austin as defensive coordinator for next season, but don't let the next Brian Flores, having a better DC candidate on staff, walk out the door again. And finally, 2 Steelers players go off in the NFL Pro Bowl flag football game. I don't even know why I'm talking about this, but it's probably going to be the last bit of live-action football that I talk about for a little bit, so here I go. Yesterday, the NFL Pro Bowl games wrapped up at Camping World Stadium in Orlando, Florida, with the final day being headlined by 3 events. The main event was the flag football game between the NFC and AFC, and 2 of the 4 Steelers participating in that game went off. Steeler number 1, who performed well, and predictably so because he wasn't facing any real pressure, was quarterback Russell Wilson. In what probably was his last time donning Steelers apparel, Russ Cook, going 19 for 23, 4 touchdown passes to 1 garbage time interception, and 1 celebratory dive into a foam pit. The second Steeler who was a force in this limited contact game was safety Minkah Fitzpatrick, making 6 tackles, 2 interceptions, 1 of them a pick 6, 1 pass defense, and he too had a happy trip to the foam pit. If only one, preferably both of these 2, had just put up similar performances throughout the season, or at the very least in the wild card game against the Ravens. Other than that, the 5 other Steeler Pro Bowlers didn't do much of anything yesterday. Middle linebacker Patrick Queen had 2 tackles in the flag football game. He and kicker Chris Boswell participated in the Great Football Race obstacle course event. The teams of left guard Isaac Seumalo and defensive tackle Cam Hayward lost their respective tug-of-wars. And I seriously don't think special teamer Miles Killebrew touched a single Pro Bowl during the entire Pro Bowl, as the most active he was walking down Main Street, USA in the Magic Kingdom at Disney World. The NFC ended up defeating the AFC 76-23 in the Pro Bowl games, and this may sound cheesy, but at least those representing the Steelers had fun. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up a Monday edition of the Steel City Sports Report. Again, please be sure to like, comment, and share this video, as well as subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys back here tomorrow with some more Pittsburgh sports news.